The spider who feared the dark, in the village at the edge of the Enchanted Forest. There were no lanterns. Not because the villagers were poor, but because lanterns were unnecessary. Everyone went to sleep before sunset. Every single person, without exception. Even the cats. Because everyone knew. When the sun touched the tops of the trees, he came out of the forest. Enormous. Mossy. With 6 eyes the size of dinner plates. No one had ever seen him up close. No one wanted to. But a little witch named Zara was an exception to every rule in the village. She was 9 years old, her hat always sat crooked. And her black kitten named Ash had a terrible habit. Running off exactly where he wasn't supposed to go. It all started on a Wednesday. Zara was sitting on the windowsill reading a book about constellations. Ash lay beside her pretending to sleep. But one ear was always raised. That's how cats are when they're planning something. The sun began to set. Neighbors closed their shutters. Someone drew their curtains. The old mill stopped turning. The miller always stopped at first. Ash opened one eye, then stood up, stretched, and leaped out the window. "Ash!" Zara called. But the kitten was already running across the meadow. Straight toward the forest. Straight to the place where no one went after sunset. Zara watched him go for exactly 3 seconds. Then she picked up a lantern, put on her hat, crooked, as always, and followed. The forest was not as frightening as she had expected. Strange. Yes, certainly strange. The trees grew too close together here. As if they had gathered to talk and forgotten to leave. Mushrooms glowed with soft blue light. Water dripped somewhere. But there was no stream to be seen. Zara followed Ash's tracks. Tiny paw prints left clear impressions in the soft moss. "Ash," she whispered. She didn't want to shout. It just felt like the kind of forest where you should speak quietly. The trail led her to a clearing. In the middle of the clearing stood an enormous oak. So ancient that its roots came up out of the earth and dove back down again, as if they couldn't decide where they belonged. Nestled among the roots was a cave, and from the cave came a sound. Zara stopped. She listened. It was not a roar, not a hiss, not the terrible thing she had expected to hear. It was breathing, very large breathing, and very unsteady. The way someone breathes when they are afraid. Zara raised her lantern and looked into the cave. He was enormous. Far larger than the village rumors had described. His body was covered in dark green moss and tiny leaves, as if the forest itself had grown him from earth and branches. 8 long legs were folded so tightly they filled nearly the entire corner of the cave. And 6 eyes, all 6, were squeezed shut as tightly as possible. Ash was sitting on one of his legs, purring. The spider flinched when Zara entered. All 6 eyes flew open at once. Zara expected him to lunge at her, or growl, or do something terrifying. Instead, he pressed himself further into the corner. "Please go away," said the spider. His voice was low and quiet, like the hum of an old tree in the wind. "Why?" asked Zara. "Because it's dark now, and in the dark I can't. He fell silent. Zara looked around. Ash was still purring on his leg. The kitten clearly had no intention of going anywhere. "Are you afraid of the dark?" she asked. A long pause. "Everyone thinks they should be afraid of me," the spider finally said. "I'm big, I'm frightening. I live in the Enchanted Forest. That's how it should be. That's the way of things. But you're afraid." "Yes," he said very quietly. "I'm afraid of the dark. Since I was small. When the light goes out, I don't know where I end and everything else begins. I don't know what's there. Beyond the dark." Zara set her lantern on a stone in the middle of the cave. Light spread across the walls. The moss on the spider's body began to glow. It turned out it wasn't simply dark green but held dozens of shades within it. Emerald. Swamp green. The color of young leaves after rain. "What's your name?" asked Zara. "Moss," said the spider. "That's a good name." "Really?" "Moss grows in the darkest places," said Zara. "And it isn't afraid. So you're contradicting yourself." Moss looked at his legs, then at the lantern. Then at the girl with the crooked hat who was standing in the middle of his cave looking at him without fear. "Why didn't you run?" he asked. Because Ash didn't run, said Zara. And he's smarter than me. Zara stayed in the cave until the middle of the night. Moss talked. It turned out he knew this forest like his own legs. Every tree, every mushroom, every path that led out and every one that led deeper in. He knew where fireflies spent the winter, where the healing herb grew that the village people had been searching for years, where the spring with the purest water in the whole region was hidden. He knew all of this because he never slept at night. He walked through the forest. He studied. The only thing that saved him from his fear of the dark was movement and knowledge. You could help the village, said Zara. They're afraid of me. Because they don't know you. Do you know me? I know you're afraid of the dark. You love it when kittens purr on your legs. And you know this forest better than any map, said Zara. That's enough for a start. The next evening Zara came back, with a lantern and a pie she had baked herself. A little crooked, like her hat. Moss ate half of it, and said it was the best thing he had tasted in 100 years. Zara wasn't sure he wasn't exaggerating, but decided it didn't matter. This went on for a week, then 2, then a month. The village noticed that Zara went into the forest every evening. At first there was whispering. Then worry. Then the village elder, a tall, thin man named Corvus, came to her door. Girl, he said sternly. You've been going into the forest to see him. To see Moss, Zara corrected. Yes, that's madness. He knows where the silver wormwood grows. The herb you've been searching for 20 years to cure the cough, said Zara. Corvus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He knows. He'll show you, if you stop being afraid of him. It was not easy. The first time Moss came to the edge of the forest, 3 people fainted. 1 ran away. Corvus remained standing only because his pride would not allow him to show fear. Ash ran forward and rubbed against Moss's leg. Moss lowered his head, all 6 eyes looking at the people calmly and with a little sadness. Hello, he said in his low voice like the hum of an old tree. Corvus swallowed. Hello, he said at last. A year passed. The village changed. Not all at once. Not suddenly. But the way all real things change. Gradually and permanently. Moss showed the people paths through the forest that cut the journey to the neighboring town in half. He showed them the spring. He helped find a lost child in 1 hour, by scent and by tracks. And at night, when the darkness frightened him most, a lantern burned in his cave. Zara didn't come every day. Sometimes once a week, sometimes less, but the lantern was always there, on the stone in the middle of the cave. One day Moss asked, Zara, have you ever been afraid of anything? She thought about it. I was afraid Ash wouldn't come back, she said. That first night. But you went anyway. Because fear isn't a reason not to go, said Zara. It's just a feeling. It tells you something matters. It doesn't tell you to stop. Moss looked at the flame of the lantern. I thought that someone who is afraid is weak. Everyone thinks that, said Zara. Until they meet someone who is afraid and goes forward anyway. In the village at the edge of the Enchanted Forest, there are lanterns now. A whole avenue of them. From the last house all the way to the tree line. They say it was Moss's idea. He said that if the forest and the village were connected by light, neither side would ever need to fear the other again. They say that at night, if you look out your window, you can see a huge dark shape moving slowly along the avenue, stopping at each lantern, looking at the flame with all 6 eyes, and walking on. Not because he is no longer afraid of the dark, but because he learned to keep going in spite of his fear. Like a little girl with a crooked hat and a kitten named Ash.